Hey guys, Owen here with Seek Outside, and today I'm going to show you how to set up the Bookcliff. To set up the Bookcliff, you're going to need your poles, which could either be carbon or aluminum. You're going to need your stakes, and you're also going to need your shelter. Something that's very important for the setup is going to be this setup cordage here. This is going to help you set up the shelter really easily. It's going to give you the exact measurements you need. So check the bag to find this inside. For the moment, I'm going to set my cordage, pole, and stakes off to the side, and I'm just going to pull out the Bookcliff shelter here. The Bookcliff has two zippered doors. You want to go ahead and identify those first. This is going to be the front of your shelter, so when we go to stake this out, just keep that in mind. On the bottom of the zipper, where you would stake the shelter, you're going to find that one side has a rod pocket and one side does not. The way you stake this in is going to determine if you're going to use the shelter in awning mode or if you're going to use it in its door mode. So to use it in awning mode, you're going to simply put your stake on the side that does not have the rod pocket. To use it in just the normal two-door mode, you're going to put your stake on the side with the rod pocket. Grab two stakes, we're going to set up the front of the shelter. In this case, I'm going to set it up in two-door mode, and I'm going to drive this stake into the ground. It is easy to switch between awning and two-door mode, but just to start off, I like to choose what I'm going to plan to do. With one stake in on the zippered doors, I'm going to come to the other side, and I'm going to pull this nice and tight at the angle. Remember, this is the front of our shelter, and I'm going to just drive that stake into the ground, like so. For the next step, it's time to go grab that setup cordage we have. We're going to undo it, and what you'll notice is there should be two different colors. You're going to have your orange, and you're going to have your yellow. If for some reason you lose this cordage in the process, just know that it needs to be 133 inches for the orange cordage and 17 inches for the other cordage. You can make this at home pretty easily with paracord. This makes the setup process really easy. All you're going to do is hook your orange cordage to the stake on either side. From here, you want to pull this out at a 90-degree angle from the way you set up the front door. Once you have that pulled out, it's now time to identify the next position we're going to stake. We're going to come to the back of the shelter, which has a zippered area. You can find this by this big round cone on the back and your zippered closing here. We're going to follow this. This has a screen. We're going to follow this all the way to where the screen ends. As you can see, it's sewn in right there. This is going to be the stake point we use. So to find our correct length, we take our cordage at that 90-degree angle, and we're going to pull our stake point to here. And then once we have that, we're going to take our yellow piece of cordage to the outside of where your other stake is. And you're going to just simply slide this over. So it should look a lot like this. That is where your stake point is going to go. Grab a stake and just punch that guy into the ground. We're going to remove our cordage from this side. And one thing to note is if you look at this straight on, that rear of the shelter is slightly wider than the front of the shelter. So we're going to come over to our other stake point, and we are going to wrap the front of this around that stake point. We're going to pull this nice and straight, giving us that 90-degree angle. You're going to go back to this zippered area in the back that we use to find the last stake point. Find your netting. It's going to come back to this stake point here. We're going to pull this out. We have our cordage. We're going to bring it to this, where the end of the orange connects to the yellow. We're going to pull that out at a 90-degree angle, and we're going to mark. That's where our stake needs to go. And we're going to drive a stake in right there. At this point, we're done with our setup cordage. So we can roll this up, store this somewhere safe. We'll say, once you get good at setting up the shelter, this isn't necessarily needed, but it does help, especially on uneven terrain, to get your shelter pretty close to perfect. All you're gonna need now is 2 more stakes. That's 6 total stakes to set out this footprint. We're gonna go to the left or the right of the front zipper here. We're gonna follow this back until we find the middle, which is gonna be the second seam from the door. I'm going to take this, I'm gonna pull it nice and tight, and I'm gonna drive a stake into the ground. I'm gonna repeat this process for the other side of the shelter. I'm going to go 1 seam, 2 seams, so my second seam from the door. I'm gonna find that middle point. As you notice, the shelter is not perfectly symmetrical. You'll see why in a moment. But I'm gonna pull this tight, making sure I'm not leaning one way too much or the other. And I'm just gonna drive a stake into the ground. The footprint for the Bookcliff is all set up now, so now it's time to get our pole all ready. The Bookcliff uses 2 poles, and they can either be aluminum or carbon. Your pole is gonna have 2 adjusters. That's gonna be 1 adjuster on top and 1 adjuster on the bottom. It's best to start with one of them close to bottomed out and one in about the middle zone. I'm gonna take this pole now, open one of the zippered doors, and I'm gonna insert the pole into the cone. The cone is this white material that is also the top of the shelter. So I'm gonna insert this pole, push it up. Now from here, I can see that I still need to add a little bit more length to the pole. So I'm simply just gonna click this up until the shelter is nice and tight. I'm gonna close the door just to make sure that I've done everything correctly. Now, you can see on this side of the shelter, everything has nice tension. That is perfect, that's exactly what we're looking for. So we're gonna do our pole on the other side of the shelter, identical process, but we'll take you through it. In, opening our door, finding our cone, which is identified by this white material inside, inserting our pole like so, bringing the pole up, and clicking our pole up to get some nice tension in that shelter. Another thing you're looking for is that this ridge line in between the 2 poles is nice and tight, and the pole heights are somewhat similar. If your seams aren't tight, or you have something called witch hatting, which is where the teepee comes at an angle, you're gonna need to pull your stake, move it in, and raise the pole. If your seams are too loose in between, then what you want to do is pull the stake out and lower the pole. It's now time to move on to the back. So the 2 zippers are our front. The back side of that is going to be the back of the shelter. And you may be looking at it thinking, what did I do wrong? It's all indented here. Well, this is part of the brilliant design of the Bookcliff here. This is supposed to act as a wall, like a wall tent. So you want to grab the back side of the shelter. Again, that cone that we were talking about back here that has the zipper, we want to grab that and the associated cordage, pull it out, grab a stake, and just drive that into the ground. To finish building off the shape of this shelter, to the left and the right of this center cone here are going to be 2 additional guy out points. We're going to pull these out. One word of advice is try and keep these in line with the seam. So if I pull it out straight, that works. But if I pull it out at a crazy angle, it's going to start deforming the rest of the shelter. So just pull it out straight with the seam. That's how it's designed to pull out the shelter. Go ahead and repeat this on the opposite side. Now, the Bookcliff is designed to be used with a support pole It's not always needed, but if you're in snow or harsher weather, we do recommend that. Another thing is if you want to get this a little bit straighter, the longer the piece of cordage you cut, the more straight this is going to be. But because I'm using the support pole and I want this nice and short so nobody's tripping over it, I'm going to simply just pull the bottom of this down at the zipper. I'm going to drive a stake in here. I'm going to leave this tensioned out, and I'm going to grab a trekking pole or one of our carbon fiber poles for trekking pole tents and make this nice and straight. Now, the Bookcliff is designed to be used with a support pole. It's not always needed, but if you're in snow or harsher weather, we do recommend that. Another thing is if you want to get this a little bit straighter, the longer the piece of cordage you cut, the more straight this is going to be. But because I'm using the support pole and I want this nice and short so nobody's tripping over it, I'm going to simply just pull the bottom of this down at the zipper. I'm going to drive a stake in here. I'm going to leave this tensioned out, and I'm going to grab a trekking pole or one of our carbon fiber poles for trekking pole tents and make this nice and straight. Another really easy and cheap way to make this wall a little bit more straight while running shorter cordage is to just use a redirect. You can do this with a trekking pole as well, or just a piece of stick. This is going to help raise this up, which gives you that nice straight sidewall. To put our support pole in, we just need to open one of our zipper doors here. Come inside the shelter, of which you're going to find the backside of this cone here has a rod pocket in it. So I'm going to use my trekking pole for this. I'm going to put one end of my trekking pole in, and then I am going to use this, tension it out, and that gives me my nice and straight sidewall right there. The last thing to do to get this shelter all staked out is go to your vestibules, which are going to be your kind of small teepee sides here. And we're going to stake out this middle seam. There's going to be a middle seam on the back side too. Just simply stake that out. Stake the other side out. And then go to the other side of your shelter. Repeat that same process on the other side. Just stake out our vestibule here. If you aren't planning on using the awning, you're going to have two more stake points here on the front. You're going to have one down low, right in between the zippered doors. You can just pull that out gently, run that stake in, and you'll have a guy out point here in the front. I like this one to be a little bit longer. This is going to give you more interior space inside the shelter, as well as more stability in wind, rain, or snow. So right there, that's the basics on how to set up the Bookcliff. If you walk around the shelter, you'll see it's all nice and tight. It's not going anywhere. You will also notice that you have a lot more guy out points that you can use to either increase space or increase stability. These are found all around the shelter, and that's up to you to play with to increase your shelter stability or bring that extra room. Just to go over a few features here on the Bookcliff and how they work, we're going to start here at the doors. Again, we have it in two-door mode here. Easy to just open these up. We're just going to pull this zipper all the way up. We have a door tie back on the middle section and the lower section. How this works, it's just a toggle that wraps around all this door material. Grab the toggle from the inside, thread it through that loop on the outside, and do the same exact thing here on the bottom. Grab your toggle, thread it through the loop, it catches, and then your door is all tied back. So you can do that on both zippered doors. The Bookcliff has a lot of ventilation, and this is a really cool feature here. It has a zippered ventilation system here in the back, and it's going to work a lot like our door tiebacks did. So as you can see, there's these loops up on this upper seam here that creates that wall. You're going to just roll this guy up and tie it back with those toggles. Once again, you can do this on both sides to get maximum ventilation. You're also going to notice that there's multiple stake loops here on this netting as well. So if I want, I can just simply pop this out, do both sides for maximum ventilation. And then to seal it off from critters and such, I can grab the screen and kind of tie it around that stake point again. You're gonna have one to the left as well as the right. And this gives you some amazing ventilation on warmer days or wetter days. One thing to note here on the back side of the shelter is if you have your trekking pole too tall or your pitch just isn't, exactly perfect, you might have a little bit of a shelf here. When that comes to snow and rain loads, it can be a little bit annoying because you're gonna have quite a bit of weight right here. What I like to do is I just pull my trekking pole down, kind of change the direction of my guy out point, and now you have a spot that's things are going to slide off much easier and you aren't going to have all that snow load build up. And lastly, one of the coolest features of the Bookcliff is the awning that is on this shelter. So we've seen it in 2-door mode. We're going to simply switch it over to the awning mode, which you can use in a ton of different weather. It's actually quite stable. To get started with that, you're simply just going to switch these stake points out, which you can usually do without removing the stake. So I'm going to take it from the awning side, I'm going to pull it off that stake, and I'm going to connect it to the door side, which you can usually just pull right on there. If you had any stake points here in the center, in between your 2 doors, just go ahead and remove those. I've already done that here. And then again, switch your stake point up here in the front, pull it off the awning side, and move it over to the door side. Once we have that going, process is real easy. Open up both of your zippers. I recommend moving them up to the top. It's going to put a lot less stress on your zippers. You can do it lower, just don't tighten it out as much. Now from here, there's a few things you can actually do. If you don't need the awning, if you want this big open space here, you can roll up the door. Just roll it up like you kind of would the other doors. And you can tie it off by using some cordage at this D-ring inside up to the top. Now most people are gonna wanna use the awning feature. Again, we're gonna come back to these rod pockets we talked about in the beginning of the video. We're gonna take a pole, stick, twig, whatever we might. I tend to use sticks, but these poles also come in handy quite a bit. Go ahead and tie some cordage to this. I like a little bit longer, it's easier to get more leverage, but shorter is also nice, less of a trip hazard. And we're gonna pull this at about a 45-degree angle, and we're gonna stake it down. The 45-degree angle is going to give you more stability in that awning comparatively to pulling it out straight. For the other side, we can just go ahead and find this rod pocket, do the exact same thing, thread your pole, stick, whatever it may be. These are pretty burly, made out of Cordura, so something sharp should not hurt them. We're gonna pull that tight, get our pole where we want it, like that, and we're gonna pull our cordage at a 45-degree angle. This one I went a little bit longer, a bit longer, just to make it easier to have more leverage. I'm gonna pull that nice and tight, drive that into the ground, and voila, we have an awning here on the Bookcliff. It's nice and tight. I usually just take my guy out cordage, throw it up there, but you can walk in, walk out, have your stove in the shelter if it's a bit of a nicer day, still be able to see out of your shelter when it's rainy. Really sweet. Another quick note, if you are in heavy rain, you can actually use this stake point here, stake it down to the ground, and this is going to create a gutter effect, so no water is going to pull up here, and it's also going to tighten down the awning a little bit more. Anyways, this has been the Bookcliff shelter. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. It's a pretty easy setup, and just a huge tent overall with a lot of really cool features. If you guys have any questions about it, drop them down in the comments or send us an email, info@seekoutside.com. Otherwise, have a great day and thanks for watching.